Welcome, everybody, again to the COP Drop, a daily live stream during COP28, hosted by the Face for Biodiversity Coalition and the United Religions Initiative. This is, sorry, we're just having a bit of technical difficulties this morning, but we hope to get back. Okay, thank you, everyone, for joining the COP Drop, a daily live stream hosted by the Face for Biodiversity Coalition and the United Religions Initiative. Each day we are here discussing the latest developments from Dubai with a particular focus on nature and biodiversity. And today is extra important and special for us because it is Nature Day at COP28. My name is Gopal Patel. I serve as the co-convener for the Faith to Biodiversity Coalition. And as always, I'm joined by my dear friend and colleague, Lauren Van Ham, who is the Climate Action Coordinator at the United Religions Initiative. Lauren, it's a Saturday. How are you doing?
It's just great to be with both of you today, and COP Drop continues.
It certainly does. We never stop at the COP Drop. And we are so delighted to be joined by Sister Maureen Goodman from the Brahma Kumaris World University. Maureen, it's so nice to see you. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about the work that you do in the context of your organization?
So first of all, very nice to be with you both and to be with everyone who's watching. So thank you for that. So yes, I'm with the Brahma Kumaris. I'm based in London, but of course I also travel quite a bit. Program director. But I've had a particular connection with climate change for quite some years. But actually, it's been the last 3 years that I've been with the COP conferences and also for the first time in COP Biodiversity in Montreal. And I just see the urgency of everything. And I see that it's very slow for governments to catch on to the urgency of everything, if I'm very honest. But of course, the message or the approach that we have when we are working with climate change or with any of the aspects of environment, of course, is that how we are, what's happening within our own consciousness has a great impact on the climate. And when we first sort of shared this kind of perspective in Copenhagen in 2009, people thought, well, you know, that's a nice theory and nice people, and they passed us by. But it's not like that now. People are listening, and people are very, very aware of the moral and ethical dimension of climate change. Whether they act on it, of course, is another matter, but there definitely is a growing awareness. And of course, for the Brahma Kumaris, we very much want to develop a right relationship with nature. And that involves, of course, a spiritual journey, because it is a spiritual crisis. It's not just an environmental crisis. The root is the spiritual crisis. But also, of course, we want to put that into practice, and we have, you know, projects such as the sustainable yogic agriculture, tree planting and nurturing, which nurtures the spirit at the same time. Our solar energy projects. So, you know, anything that you do with your heart really becomes sustainable and long-term. If you just do it for the sake of it, you know, it can finish at any time. But when the heart and the spirit is with it, then there's real sustainability.
That's beautiful. And how has this COP been for you, and what have you and the broader BK delegation been doing in Dubai over the last 10 days or so?
Well, we've had, I've just come for the second week actually, but of course been with all the delegation here. And we've had about 35 different programs and events, whether they're side events, panels. We've also been doing a live stream every evening on wisdom from COP28, looking at the perspectives of science, of religion, of spirituality. And, you know, that's been very, very interesting and in-depth conversations, because now this is what we need. We need to look at everything from all the perspectives. And I liked very much what you were saying this morning in one of the events, Gopal, when you were online, that we've got to bring it all together. We have all these silos of COPs, you know, whether it's desertification, biodiversity, etc., climate, but it's actually all part of the same thing. You know, it's very hard to separate it. So from that point of view, it's been fruitful. And what has also been very interesting is the fact that there's a faith pavilion for the first time, COP15. And I was also lucky enough to be at the pre-COP Summit of Faith Leaders in Abu Dhabi at the beginning of November. And that was very interesting. And really, you could feel that the government here, the UAE government, really wanting to bring forth the voice of faith. And there were really very interesting leaders who came together. And the whole, you know, the main thing that was being shared was really about inclusivity, including faith, including young people, including women. Now, we really want to see that taking shape in the negotiations. But the Faith Pavilion is a whole building. You know, I expected a booth, but I saw a whole building, and it's a great space where we can do things. It really, really is. So that's really putting things on the map, if you like. But as I say, a lot more needs to be done. And, you know, when we can get to a point where deliberations, decisions have the well-being of human beings at their heart, rather than the finance and the resources, then we really can apply the solutions, because the solutions are there, but it needs the will.
That's really well said. And I'm wondering, Sister Maureen, as you think about what you are experiencing at COP and how faith groups and spiritual communities might continue to sort of apply pressure in a loving way or walk the talk, as it were, in the weeks and months out of this COP. What do you see as being important? What might be some instructions or invitations for spiritual communities and faith groups next?
You use the phrase walk the talk. I think that's the first thing. And we have certain principles, which I know many faith communities do, but, you know, living simply, buying compassionately, you know, being aware of how you are showing up on the planet in terms of nature. And so I think that it's no use to say good things and then not walk the talk within your own lifestyle. So that's really the very first thing. But also nurturing a consciousness of respect for nature, and of moving away from the paradigm of domination to paradigm of respect and cohabitation. Well, can't even say cohabitation. That's not right. We are all together. You know, there's no one who owns the earth, actually, but people try to own it. And we know what that leads to. So yes, I think that's the first thing. But I think also the incredible work that faith communities are doing at the grassroots, and that really, you know, when you empower communities, you get community involvement. And of course, I was hearing just this evening about, you know, one young woman who is doing so much work with farmers in India and helping them to farm organically, to have diversity in the cultivation, and you know, really restore the land and the community through that. So the grassroots, and I think community has an impact on government. So the stronger that community involvement becomes, that's a big help. But I think also from the leaders, we need to keep the pressure up, whether it's you know, our statements that we sign, whether it's meetings, whether it's whatever events that we hold, but we need to keep communicating the urgency to governments. so, so crucial. And yeah, this is some of the things that I'll be thinking of. But also just our prayer and meditation to give, those vibrations to nature and to humanity and to the leaders, so that wisdom begins to enter into the way in which we are taking decisions in connection with the natural world.
It would be nice for us to experience a taste of that before we end our conversation with you today.
Right.
I want to ask you one more question before we maybe do have a short meditation together.
Right.
There are lots of conversations about nature-based solutions. The phrase "the rights of nature" is used a lot now. And I'm aware that there are cooperation circles across the URI network who, even if their city or their government hasn't recognized the rights of nature in an official capacity, that there are groups of people who say, well, this section of a river runs through the land where our house of worship sits. And so we are going to really have a ceremony here to recognize the rights of this river. And that sort of act is a powerful way for us to be in greater reciprocity, I think, with these systems that sustain us. I wonder if you have some ideas for us in how we deepen our connection, our intimacy with the living system.
Actually, it's a constant confluence, the confluence of the living system of thought and the living system of the earth. And so I think the most important thing is to deepen our awareness of the impact that our thoughts have. And whatever, especially, I think one of the things that's so important, how we connect with nature, the food that we take into our bodies, it's just a crucial connection. Now, if that food has been produced with violence, what's it going to do to, I eat it, but what's the impact on the mind and the soul and the being? And so to understand the intimate connection, that's really a sacred act to then begin to interact with nature in that way. And so, to change our food systems so that, if we were to, just as there's talk of a treaty to phase out fossil fuels, we need a treaty to phase out meat and dairy. We need to move in those directions. But of course, I think what's a very beautiful thing that we do in the Brahma Kumaris, we cook with fresh ingredients, and we cook in God's remembrance. We offer the food to God. And then when we eat, we're aware that the food is nourishing the soul and the body. So sacredness in eating, I think, is a very beautiful way to go, definitely. And also, we're so aware that, whenever we maybe have a building project or, beginning something new, there'll be a ceremony to thank the land, to meditate there, so that you begin with good feelings, good omens, if you like, and there's you are enlisting the cooperation of the land in what you're doing, rather than just saying, get the hammers out and whatever, and start digging. But you're actually engaging with matter on every level, and that's very important.
Yeah, those are beautiful examples. Gopal, do you have another question, or should we just do a couple minutes of meditation?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect segue, Sister Maureen. Okay. If you could lead us in a very short prayer or meditation, and please tell us how to do it, because some of us aren't so familiar with prayer or meditation. So if you can walk us through the kind of the mechanics of it and then lead us through one, that'd be lovely.
Okay, great. I mean, meditation is about using your thoughts. Our thoughts are energy. And so it's about taking a decision. If I'm producing my thoughts either they can be connected with the external and then creates a lot of fear, a lot of upheaval often, or they can be connected with the internal. So I'll just do a little commentary of how I'm using my thoughts as I meditate, and just follow those, and let's try.
And should we close our eyes?
No, you can keep your eyes open.
Okay.
It's up to you, whatever you feel comfortable. If someone wants to close their eyes, that's fine. If you keep your eyes open, why we do open eye meditation actually, because we want that consciousness that we're experiencing within to carry over naturally into our everyday living. So even with the stimuli around, can I still be the master of my mind? So I take a moment to take my thoughts inwards, to discover my inner world at the core of my being. And at that core, I find the treasure of peace. The treasure of love. A being of peace. And in that peace, I connect with the unlimited source of peace, the unlimited source of love. And I absorb those qualities into myself, into my being, and allow them to overflow into the world for the healing of humanity and the healing of our planet. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Maureen, for bringing some news from the COP and offering some ways to really be connected at one with negotiations that can feel stressful or difficult, or like you said, just too slow. and also with the ways that our thoughts and our actions can also maybe move things along in ways that are equally, if not more powerful, because we're in community taking action together. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Please give our best to the rest of the Brahma Kumari delegation there, and we look forward to being with you again soon.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All the best to both of you too. Bye-bye.
Today is Nature Day. As Sister Maureen said there, I was on a session early this morning. I don't know what day it is, so it's Saturday. What's the time now? 11:20 a.m. New York. I started my day or ended my yesterday. I'm not sure what it was at 2:30 a.m. Eastern for a session we had at the Faith Pavilion. that was called Nature and Climate, How to Align Advocacy and Action. And it was great. We had Susan Hendershot from Interfaith Power and Light, Alberto from the World Resources Institute, Nicholas Pandey from the Anglican Communion, and myself online. And we had a really great conversation about how we can bring, as Maureen was saying there, the world of climate and the world of nature together. And it's been fascinating to see the evolution of nature in the climate conversations, because before, nature was just about forests, and there'd be like a little side event or a little booth talking about the importance of planting trees, and that was the extent of nature in the climate COPs. And now it's becoming really front and center, and there are some really exciting announcements that I wanted to kind of lift up today about what's come out of Dubai. And I know, Lauren, you were there with us in Montreal last year at the signing and the work of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So could you share a little bit about that experience and parts of the Global Biodiversity Framework that really speak to you and where faith communities could really take inspiration from?
Yeah, thank you. I think that part of what is so exciting about the GBF, the Global Biodiversity Framework, is that it is seeing the interconnection. It's inviting us to be more connected to the interconnection. So it isn't just trees or ocean, right? And as a result of that, there are more and more examples, at least at URI, where I can speak to some of the grassroots efforts I'm most familiar with, in inviting us to be listening to those who have lived close to the earth forever, right? Earth-based traditions, those who describe themselves as indigenous, and also invitations for us to connect, if you will, to our own indigeneity. And so some of that is just by starting with what's outside our window. And I think that has been really influential for faith groups. There are some churches in the Midwest of the United States right now who are doing a lot of work just to encourage pollinators, so that bees and birds are encouraged to continue to keep our food secure. And there are all kinds of ceremonies and rituals now that are proclaiming praise, if you will, for these winged creatures who our lives depend upon. So it's things like that where we're able to see how our sacred texts and our liturgies, in I think in every religious tradition, connect with these water, air, soil, other creatures, and lifting that up in ways that are like there's traction there, that these actions all matter.
Right. Yeah, you're right. The GBF is it's a great, I don't want to reduce it to this, but it's a great tool. It's a great mobilizing resource where there's freshness to it. There's I think it goes further than what some people would expect a framework on biodiversity to go in. For example, it really recognizes the rights of indigenous peoples. It recognizes that women need to be so much part of the conversation. It brings in the private sector about how they have to, not how they have to, but how they should disclose the biodiversity supply chains that they're dependent on. So it's a really wonderful framework. But obviously, the reality is when it goes into implementation, and that's what so many organizations and governments are focusing on right now. Could I share some of the announcements that came out of COP today? Because I've been in between sleeping and waking and walking around like a zombie in my apartment, I've been trying to track what's been going on there. So the first thing is that there's a nature positive pavilion at the COP, and there's been a nature positive pavilion at the COP for a couple of years now. And today they launched the Nature Positive Initiative. They had a soft launch in New York during the General Assembly in September. And so the Nature Positive Initiative is really to bring together a whole range of organizations, not just environmental conservation groups who have historically focused on environment and conservation, but also private sector, philanthropies, foundations, civil society actors such as youth groups, women-led organizations, indigenous groups, and faith groups as well. And we had a faith speaker there at the launch of the initiative. And the whole idea around nature positive is that there needs to be some kind of rallying call, just as 1.5 degrees is the rallying call for climate. It's a soundbite. People can understand it. It rolls off the tongue pretty easily. You can put it on a pin on your lapel, and so nature positive is similar in the sense that like it's where we need to get to. We need to live in a nature positive world, and it's a North Star. It's something that we can all try and do our best to achieve. And so it's very exciting that the Nature Positive Initiative, this global coalition was launched today, and that faith groups are there at the table now as part of that initiative and are encouraged to engage with it as much as possible. And if people want to go online, they can do a search for the Nature Positive Initiative and find out. The other thing I wanted to lift up, which I've just lost on my LinkedIn feed, which is fine. This is what happens on a live stream. But today, the climate COP presidency and the CBD COP presidency from last year, who was China, are issuing a joint statement. I think it's a joint letter or a joint declaration to say that the climate goals and the goals of the global biodiversity framework need to be linked together. And from what I read, it sounded like a number of other countries are supporting of that effort, such as the UK government, the Japanese government, and most interestingly, the US government. And the reason that's interesting is because the United States, although it's a signatory to the UNFCCC process, it's not to the CBD process. And so although America was there in Montreal last year, it was not, at the table in ways that it is in the climate conversation. And so I think that's a really important joint statement from the two COP presidencies, because that's exactly what Sister Maureen was saying, that we need a joined up approach, that these siloed conversations are no longer serving us. So that's a very, very important, exciting announcement that came out of Dubai. I'll have to keep tracking. I'm sure others will as well, what else comes out. But I think those two points around the Nature Positive Initiative and this joined up approach between climate and nature are really two exciting announcements coming out of Dubai.
I agree. And, this sounds so cliche, but isn't it kind of a marvel that after all of this, Gopal, we come full circle to, we're interconnected. Like we kind of have this amnesia around this concept, but we can't avoid it. We have to see these things as absolutely interrelated, and that is true for us in our spiritual teachings, in indigenous life ways, and now we are seeing it is true at the policy level as well.
There's definitely a religious teaching or sermon there that we end up where we started. We go so far, but we come back home at the end. Maybe we'll save that for a future COP drop. But today, anything else from you, Lauren, that you want to share?
I hope that people go off and have a good day today and celebrate, enjoy some nature.
Yes, definitely. Please go out, enjoy the natural world. We are the COP drop, and we will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, where I hope I get some more sleep and I'll be a bit more right and ready. And Lauren, I'm sure you'll be great as always. So we'll see you tomorrow.
See you then.